Do you find those after-dinner games between the generations exciting? Here's my favorite, Monopoly. Monopoly on the truth. To play Monopoly on the truth, all you need to do is to think that your opinion is better than everyone else's, and you don't even need a playing board, okay?
Okay, Boomer.
Well, actually, it's not okay, because though Monopoly on the truth is exciting and agitating and aggravating and... Stop!
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer.
I'd like to welcome Alee Quick. Now, Alee Quick is with the NewsLiteracy Project, trying to teach people how to interpret news properly. Now, I used to be in TV news, and it was said of some reporters, not me, that they didn't let the facts get in the way of a good story. However, I was also in radio news, and we worked hard at keeping the facts straight. So, Alee, you sent me an interesting picture, and this was taken in the dark. It was rather crude. It was a picture of what looked like wolves or coyotes, and their eyes were very bright white, and they were behind what looked like a little dog, a chihuahua. And it was something that got on the web and social media about the fact that this little chihuahua was hanging out with the coyotes. And it would not make a lot of sense to begin with, because you would think that the coyotes would eat up the chihuahua, not the chihuahua being there playing around with the coyotes. But that was a very realistic picture, and I think that's what happened.
So I think that we can do a little bit of investigating to see whether or not this is legitimate. You have hit on something kind of perfect right from the start here. You mentioned that this image, although it appears to be legitimate, doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that is an excellent place to start when we are looking at something we may see on social media. First of all, first step, you're there, you've found a red flag, and that's that it really doesn't make a lot of logical sense.
Yes,
so
but it looked real.
It looked real, and there are so many things out there that look convincing with the use of, digital software that can alter images. It can be really hard to tell just by looking, right, whether something is real or not.
How could you tell? Because it looked real to me. As a baby boomer, I am convinced.
Well, I understand. Sometimes it's fun to believe that something like this may be true. But again, like I said, you hit on something really important there. You said yourself, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense, right? So that is our first clue that something may be off here. And there are ways that we can investigate and find out for sure. So can I show you the picture? Can we look at it together?
All right.
Here is the image in question. And yes, there is a label on here that is giving something away. This image has been altered. But as you described, what we're looking at here is an image from a trail cam that shows a pack of wolves. And among that pack of wolves is, as you said, a tiny little cute chihuahua that appears to be just hanging around with the big dogs, right?
Mhm.
So this is what it looks like. So how can we go about determining whether this is legitimate or not? As I said, first step, we're wondering if this makes logical sense. I am going to take a screenshot of this, and we can put this image into Google Lens as an image and see what we get. Indicates that this may be a widely circulated fake image. So that's a clue, another clue. But let's look a little bit further. So here we find in a visual match a Facebook post that appears to be the source of this. But we also see some other things. We have an article from Snopes that has this image. Snopes, for those who may not be familiar, is a fact-checking site, one of the oldest on the internet. It's been around for many years. Let's see what else we find. We find a fact check, another fact check from Yahoo. We find a social media post from RumorGuard, which is made by NewsLiteracy Project, yours truly. So we're seeing some clues here that this may not be legitimate. And if we go to Snopes, do photos show scrappy stray chihuahua that joined wolf pack in Minnesota? We found the rumor was all bark, no bite. So there you go. We have we have found that this is not legitimate. So I'm going to show you the actual post on RumorGuard, which is a website that my organization, the News Literacy Project, produces. We use viral online rumors to teach news literacy lessons, and we can talk a little bit more about news literacy as we go. We did find when we did a search like this that USA Today had a story in 2020 about the wolves that were pictured. This was from a trail cam project that was legitimate. So this started as a legitimate image, but it did not have a chihuahua in it originally. So we can look at this trail cam research. This is from Northern Michigan University, and we see the wolves in this trail cam image. So we can pretty quickly find the original source of this, and that helps us determine that this may have been altered. Does the claim make logical sense? Chihuahuas really are not likely to join wolf packs, and sometimes if something seems too strange to be true, it is.
Okay. That reminds me, I was working at a radio station years ago. It was a news talk station. And what they did is they would allow people to go on the air if they paid for an hour of airtime. And there was a person, I'm not going to tell you what he was. He had a doctorate degree, but it was not in medicine or chemistry. And he was interviewing an engineer. He didn't say what type of engineer he was. And he was talking about putting fluoride in water. And there was a town in England that did not allow fluoride in its water, injecting fluoride in the water. He was suggesting, without really saying it, that the town in England thought that the fluoride was dangerous. So what I did is I decided to look up the town in England, and they found out, yes, they did not want fluoride in the water because it already had enough natural fluoride. So, you know, I was suspicious just on the basis is the guy was not a biologist or a medical doctor, and the engineer, he could have been anything from an electrical engineer to a train engineer. But it sounded very, very plausible on listening to it. And I think what we're talking about now is critical thinking, the ability to sit there and go, I want to believe this, but is it real? And that's what you're working on with children.
Right. Yeah, my organization, the News Literacy Project, is a national education nonprofit. And what we do is we create resources and classroom-ready tools for educators to use in K-12 settings to talk about news literacy. And news literacy can involve a lot of things. One thing we try to do is help students understand how journalism works, how journalists go about their work, how they think about their work, how they approach verification and ethics and things like that. And, you know, part of that kind of behind the scenes look can help us understand, you know, the process of creating or, you know, reporting information. And, you know, on down the line, this helps us to vet sources to determine what is credible or not. So that's what our work is centered around.
Well, it's worthwhile and it's needed. Here in Tennessee, I've talked to people my age or even older who don't really pay much attention to sources. I talked to two people, one guy in his 50s, another guy in his late 70s, who never heard of long COVID. And I looked at Fox News and some of the other, they all reported it. So they were getting their information, my guess is, not from news sources, but from people who are commentators. And so they would not cover something like that, or they didn't.
Right.
So
yeah,
I see this all over the place. And the thing that bothers me is not just news literacy, but literacy all around. And I've noticed a report from Harvard. We talked about this. 40% of fourth graders and 1/3 of sixth graders are not proficient in reading. Now, you're out to teach them news literacy, but a lot of it, could you mute your mic? Oh, for God. You know, I have a weekend job and I don't have to basically do anything except this. I'm going to edit this thing. Okay, don't worry about it. These things happen all the time. In live television, they didn't because we had engineers. Anyway, now what the hell was I talking about? Slot car racing? No. Bikinis? No.
Literacy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, I've noticed that not only are there problems with literacy among younger people, but older people as well, particularly since they are not reading books or magazines or newspapers anymore. They're going online using this. I have the same problem. I read news for 2 hours every morning, and it's something called smart news, everything from Al Jazeera to Fox News and everything in between, BBC. And but as far as reading books, I used to have a stack of books I was working my way through all the time. Now I have to force myself to read a chapter. I read a chapter today. Oh boy, congratulate yourself. So I'm having the same problems. And another person who was a radio and TV graduate with me in the 1970s, we went to Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. It was one of the top 5 schools in the country for radio and TV. Have you heard of SIU?
Me heard of SIU, maybe
Yes.
a thing or two.
We'll get to that in a moment. First, Bob Smith. Bob, you're not going to like this. Anyway, Bob Smith was talking about the fact that he had been having problems doing a lot of reading himself because he was online so much. And so he had to make a special effort to start reading books again. He went months, just like I did, not reading books. So that, I think, would complicate matters as well. Even though, we're educated, we're no longer reading things. We're reading things on paper. We're reading things on the web that we many times agree with. That's why we read them. That's some of the problems that you encounter, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, it is the most complicated information landscape in history.
Mhm.
There's no question about that. In some ways, the genie's kind of already out of the bottle, so we don't seek to necessarily change that, but rather, put tools in the toolbox for students to help, interpret some of this really, really complex informational, systems that we're encountering, right? This landscape that we all have to live in. So yes, literacy is certainly an issue that, is concerning. Part of news literacy can fit right in with literacy education as well. If students are, starting out by, learning to read and kind of move through the world in a digital world, then, these tools are more important than ever. So, that's why we talk about things like something we call zoning information. You kind of brought this up, mentioned it earlier, where we are starting by helping students understand the difference between news and opinion and raw information and news and things like that. So that's where we kind of start. That's our foundational lesson, is in zoning information. And young kids can do this too, and they're already encountering this even as they're beginning to learn to read. So it's a really, really important part of a well-rounded education in general, this news literacy skills. We're kind of doing a disservice to students if we don't, help them learn these skills at the same time they're learning, reading, arithmetic, all these things, right? It's all part of it now.
Now, when I was a kid, we didn't have any news literacy issues. We had the networks and local stations. I know people in Southern Illinois don't like to hear this. I'm from Chicago. Anyway, in Chicago, when I was a kid, we had the 3 networks, a public station, Channel 11, WTTW, and later Channel 32, and then 26 independent stations. And that was pretty much it in Chicago, plus a whole bunch of radio stations and several newspapers. My father would take the train reading the Wall Street Journal on the way to Chicago. We lived in a suburb. On the way back, he would read the Sun-Times or the Tribune or something like that. And newspapers are going out of style, I'm afraid, which takes us to you. You're at Southern Illinois University, the Daily Egyptian. Okay, now I want to explain to people who are not from Southern Illinois. The Daily Egyptian. The Egyptian is what Southern Illinois was called at one point Little Egypt, because one of the reasons I've heard is because there was a big drought in northern Illinois, and people came down to southern Illinois where there was crops still growing. Southern Illinois has a milder climate than central and northern Illinois. And so Southern Illinois University became the home of the Salukis. The Saluki is an Egyptian hunting dog. So I'm a Saluki, you're a Saluki, and you don't want to call a woman a dog, but I mean, I'm sure you're proud under the circumstances. Anyway, we had the Daily Egyptian, but it was daily, and it was in print, and it was all over Carbondale, which is the city where Southern Illinois University is, all over campus. Now it says Daily Egyptian, but it comes out
weekly on Wednesdays in print, but online every day at dailyegyptian.com.
Okay, so you're there. You're the director, the editor?
So, in addition to my full-time job at NewsLiteracy Project, I am fortunate enough to be an advisor to the Daily Egyptian. So I spend some evenings with the students and weekends as well. But it's a student-run, student-led newspaper, and they're really incredible. And it's still all over Carbondale, and it's really become a community newspaper these days.
Well, it's nice to hear. Nice to see fellow Saluki working in news again. Do you have any final notes or things to say that might be of interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the most common things that we talk about these days and is, just the complexity of the information landscape, as we talked about. It can make people feel really overwhelmed, right? We're living in a time where we're just having a hard time knowing what to believe. And news literacy is here to help us with that, right? To kind of give us some skills and to just remind everyone that there are solutions. News literacy is an excellent solution. It's about education. It's about learning how to think about news and information, but not what to think. And I see a lot of hope and a lot of opportunity out there with this type of education, that we can all, just get a little bit better at, finding and sharing credible information.
Interesting discussion, and I promised myself that I'll do some more reading from books. And if I am so sure of something, I won't take the attitude of I won't let the facts get in the way of a good story. I'll actually check the facts. What do you think of that, Alee?
I think that's a solid plan. You're well on your way.
Okay. I'm not a very good boomer, but what the hell? That's Alee Quick. Thanks for coming on board.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer.